Hey y'all, welcome to another episode of On the Way Home, where I share stories, intimate conversations, and interesting scenes from my everyday life here in Ayman. So, let me tell you about that one time I accidentally walked into a breakdancing class. This story is a particular favorite among my friends. All in all, it was a very funny coincidence. Let me start by telling you what was happening before I walked into this class. Less than a year into my time in Muscat, I started having insomnia in response to various stressors. I never knew or understood what insomnia felt like whenever anyone, especially my college friends, would complain about it. Unfortunately, now I know what insomnia feels like a bit too well. Around May of 22, I was a week into a particularly bad insomnia episode and desperately looked for anything to get me to fall asleep. Your average sleep aid pill didn't help. So I thought to go back into yoga since it was something that I liked in the past and should ideally help. After inquiring about a yoga class with a gym in Al Khair, I ended up walking into a breakdancing class. I genuinely do not remember who was at fault in that communication, me or the receptionist on the phone. Since my cognitive abilities were under par, I won't be surprised if it was me who misread the timing of classes. Anyways, I followed the class instructions mindlessly, and it took me entirely too long to realize that I was not in a yoga class. When I finally asked the instructor about the class I'm in, he didn't confirm nor deny if it was a yoga class. He just waved his hand and said, "It's okay. It's good to learn something new." I wasn't particularly bothered by the end of that class since the physical exhaustion finally got me some sleep that night. The activity was exciting and the people there were pretty chill, so I continued going. Plus, I had my own connections to this atmosphere, which I'll talk about later on. Anyways, over time, I grew curious about the people who frequent this group as I spend a fair number of hours with them every week. One of the people who stood out to me from the dance group is Ayman. I invited him to the studio because I noticed that we had a couple of things in common, and overall, he's quite the conversationalist. It was clear to me that art plays a big role in his life, and dance is an extension of that. So he indulged my curiosity about his history with dance, which dates back to 9th grade summer. Tell me about the first time that you started breaking or dancing in general, if you remember.
This story, I will never forget it. You know, I have, he's actually my uncle, but he's in my age, I'm fat.
Yeah.
So I remember this day when we used to go, me and my brother and him, to the beach and, practicing some gymnastic, learning how to do backflips and stuff like little stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So when we reached the beach that day, Sully got a call and he said, "No, it's canceled. We're going back home." Then he said, "Come with me and bring your shoes with you." So we went to Al Quram Beach, and that day we were practicing a little bit backflips and stuff. And my brother used to jump across all of us. We are laying down and does a flip on top of us.
And how many of you were laying down? Do you remember?
Like 6. I remember 6 or 7.
So 6 of you laying down, and
yeah.
he's just...
And funny thing, me and Fahad will put to the last. So if anything happens, you can land on us. We are not practicing that.
Yeah.
I remember one of the crew members said, we want our kids to practice. And that day, we didn't go back immediately at home.
He successfully did it across all.
Yeah, he did.
So you weren't hurt.
Yeah, we were safe. Alhamdulillah. So then they grabbed us and started to teach us the simple moves, 1, 2, 3. And the next day, he called Suli. I want them again. So we went.
Bring the kids.
Bring the kids again. We went there and slowly we started to build up this love to this thing,
For context, Suli is Ayman's older brother who's been in the dance scene for quite some time. Ayman told me that his brother invited him multiple times over the years to dance practices, but he always hesitated for one reason or another. Between me stumbling sleep-deprived into it and Ayman being dragged as an extra for a backflip stunt, I don't know which one of us got the most smooth introduction to the world of breaking. I'll leave it for you to decide. At any rate, Ayman credits dance to be the reason for a lot of changes in his life. Not just on a fitness level, but on personal and social ones too. So, when some of the close people in his life suggested that he stops doing this thing that he loves, he swiftly opposed the idea and navigated the situation with grace.
And actually, this thing that changed me to the person that I am today.
How did it change you?
During the summertime, like two months I've been practicing. Then when the school started, my mom said, like, you need to stop this. You need to focus more on your studies and, this stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, you can't focus on two things at a time. You need to focus on one thing. And he said, you are a good student. I was pretty average, like I'm getting B's and, for the first time in my life, I found something that I really appreciate and love, because I was this type of homeboy kid, I wasn't going out. I was doing the same thing over and over. I didn't have friends to hang out with.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I was like this type of introvert.
Okay.
Then I remember she lectured me. I was saying, no, I can't do this. I know I can. And even my uncle said, see, you are a smart kid. Don't do this to yourself. Listen to your mother. And then I remember my mom said, if I see you drop even one mark, you are not going out ever. Like, this is the deal. I said, okay, deal. And imagine the same year, I got the first in school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they gave you the motivation to be like, no, I'm keeping this on the side.
Yeah, I'm keeping it.
And
ever since I've been still doing it. And alhamdulillah, now she's more supportive of what I'm doing. It's been like 6 years now, I believe. Around 6 years.
6 years?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's been a long story, like a long journey. And I remember when I first started, I was a little fat, Yeah, I was fat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so there's some moves, like the simple moves, I couldn't do anything. I get cramps instantly. My stamina was really low. But, through dedication, and I know that I can reach. And, the guys are more supportive and they encourage me. You can do this if you work.
Yeah, they are very supportive. That same encouragement that Ayman received 6 years ago still carries through in the group today. The first time I went to that class, it was supposed to last for an hour, but most of us stayed a bit over 2 hours. 90% of the time, I repeatedly messed up and had a really hard time understanding what I'm supposed to do. So I didn't think I'd leave with a genuine invitation to come back. But by the end of it, multiple people told me to keep on coming back, as things are only bound to get better with more practice. If not, at least it's fun and challenging. There's a lot of lighthearted laughter and cheering. I used to think that I can easily understand why people dedicate time and energy to the things they do, but I genuinely had a hard time wrapping my mind around why this particular crew is so committed. Some people come from Al-Hil, and others from Al-Ma'bela, aka the end of the world, to Al-Khwair, on average 4 times a week for a practice that could run anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, if not more. The age range in this group is wide. Some are college students like Ayman, and others are well into established careers. With whatever that goes on in their lives, they make sure to dedicate time and space to practice together or alone. So I often wondered, why? Why are they so committed to this? Ayman gave me his 2 cents on this matter.
Different people go through different stuff in life, So it's act like type of escape. You forget everything when you dance. You just go with the music and you just having fun, You forget everything. That's why I believe that we are more dedicated about this stuff.
Yeah, it's really impressive. 4 times a week, sometimes more. And I know some of the other guys, they do a lot to at least secure spaces.
Yeah.
For you guys to just go and dance in.
Yeah.
What reactions do you normally get whenever you try to basically find a space to dance in, or you just go and dance there?
Sometimes, whenever I'm trying to find a space, it's not always we are in the gym. Sometimes at home. Sometimes we go outdoors. Like we're trying to find at least a small space that we can do a simple move. At least we are doing a movement, just to feel like you are enjoying yourself, you're dancing. Just forget everything and go with the flow. And it's not about the place. It's about how you feel and how you committed to that.
Okay. How would you describe that feeling? If you can elaborate more on it.
It's more like I'm free, I'm flying. Or whenever I'm doing this type of movement, like I go to my head, I stand up with my hand, I'm doing a backflip. I'm doing something like, I feel like, yo, I got wings, but they are not really visible, but I know I got them, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm free. There's nothing to worry about.
I remember you guys helped me do an assisted backflip, and I felt free back then. I was like, whoa, I can fight the world.
I remember that.
I just need someone to help me do the backflip. I can't do it by myself. If you haven't tried doing a backflip, this is your sign to try it out. I love how Ayman describes it, feeling free. And I think that's what I saw with a lot of people I practiced, but had a hard time condensing it into words. Doing what they like makes them seem more free. Though I'm nowhere near the level any of them are, the small victories of doing a move that I couldn't do before is not just exciting, it's freeing. This idea easily applies in so many other aspects of life for me. Progress in something is satisfying, and the confidence that comes from that makes me feel free. So I think I kind of get their why. Well, at least Ayman's why. Another thing that Ayman repeatedly told me about himself is that art, be it dance or otherwise, are great outlets for him to express himself or create new things. You guys remember COVID? Sometimes I forget that was a thing, and I think my mind tries to block out 2020 in general because it was such a volatile time for me. But when COVID comes up, I'm curious to know what it was like for other people. For Ayman, who was in 11th grade, a lot of things were suddenly on hold, and he found himself with more free time and less things to do. With the encouragement of a couple of friends, he decided to dabble in drawing. By the time I met Ayman, he was already pretty deep into illustrations and art to the point where he had an illustrated original character of his own. So it was interesting for me to learn about the background story of how this all came about, mostly because I sort of assumed that he was probably into drawing and art from a much younger age.
I have one character, I believe you saw her, like the one with white hair and red eyes. So basically this character started through different phases actually. I changed it a lot. Mm-hmm. It first began with orange hair with the short hair, you know? Mm-hmm. And like she's like more like a cat. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, trying to interpret different interpretations about the character. Then I changed her. She was like a swordman. Sword woman.
Yes, a sword
woman. Okay. So she had like dual swordsmanship. But then I changed it. I made it one sword. Then I thought, no, it's not what I want to do. I should first make a story for her, you know, because there's no good character without a backstory.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So I had this concept of this girl that got possessed by something. Then her parents, she's not literally possessed by a bad or evil spirit.
Okay.
But it changed her a lot, you know, like physically. Mm-hmm. And her mother was away from her, and you know, like this child is cursed, and some, different parent issues.
Oh, that's traumatic. Yeah. I'm like feeling so sad.
Yeah. Then when she grew up, her father realized something and started working with her, but even her mother realized that, like, oh, she's my child and the other stuff. But you know, the things can never be the same actually. But I'm still working on it, and I want to do a story and base my illustration based on that.
I'm excited. Do you think you'll ever want to like make it into a comic or anything like that?
Comic certainly is. I thought about it, but you know, it takes a lot of work. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of work, like 10 times the work I do right now.
Absolutely, especially with like writing the dialogue and then like structuring the physical movements from like one panel to another.
Yeah. So currently I'm just staying with more of illustration style.
Okay.
Like the same way the artist does.
And you just started during COVID?
During COVID, yeah.
So it's been 2 years?
2 to 3 years.
2 to 3 years? It's wild, isn't it?
It's wild. Actually, to the level that I'm reaching right now, like there's a big difference, you know?
In your style?
In my style in general, yeah.
Okay.
How I approach art, it always changes. Whenever I'm trying to learn a new thing, like for example, I've been trying to learn structure. Whenever I'm learning structure, I learn about basic shapes. Whenever I'm learning about basic shapes, I learn about perspective. Then follow up with vanishing points, follow it with composition, and etc., you know? Mm-hmm. So every time I get an answer for something, I get more questions for something else.
Okay.
Yeah. And I believe this is what helped me to improve my art until it reached the level that I have today.
Over the past couple of years, I started writing short fiction, and I've been enjoying it immensely. And hearing Ayman talk about his history with drawing made me reflect on my history with writing. While I was in middle school, I started following a good number of independent artists who had original characters with original storylines on various platforms. Since visual art wasn't my forte, I loved seeing that creative energy and often envied them for being able to create that world where they can decide whatever they want to happen in it. But as I've grown more in my writing practice, I realized that I can do the same type of storytelling that I've always envied using words. Which, by the way, was something that became clear to me towards the end of the COVID lockdowns era. I always loved storytelling and was obsessed with it, but didn't have my own practice to channel it through till a couple of years ago. Usually, people tend to be surprised to know that I wasn't always into writing from a younger age, the same way I was surprised that Ayman wasn't into drawing much earlier too. While writing can be a solo activity for me, I'm overjoyed when I can collaborate with other people to create a holistic project. This show is an example of that. And the same applies to Ayman. Drawing tends to be a solo activity for him, but he is no stranger to extending his skills to the hip-hop and dance community whenever they'd hold events and competitions. One of the cool events they host is called Groove Circle, where the audience uses a card with 2 different colors on each side, and each color represents the dancer they wish to vote for.
I worked on Groove Circle. I remember the logo back in my foundation year.
In your foundation year?
Yeah. Before I bought my iPad, working on Procreate, I was working on Photoshop. Mm-hmm. But whenever I have 2 hours or 1 hour break, I will go straight to home and work on the outdoor, then come back to the college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's been like a little overwhelming, trying to prepare for the event, trying to prepare the artwork, finishing the assignments, the other stuff, I don't get, sometimes I get overwhelmed, but, I learned how to adapt with it.
With dance being such a big part of his life, I wanted to circle back to how it changed things for him on a personal level. How did it impact his relationship with his brother, for example? How did it change him?
Sometimes we get this type in our family, like, what are you guys doing? And, but when they see us, me and my brother, during our family gathering, doing the other stuff, the choreography, and they see oh, these guys are real deal,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it strengthened the bond between me and my brother and my other relative we are with us in the gym.
Clearly it brought you guys
closer and also together. With friends. I feel like whenever I'm going there, I'm happy,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not I will ask you, how many times you found me frustrated when I'm coming to the gym? Oh my God, I'm here. Or,
not a single time, actually, no.
Yeah. And actually, fun fact about me, I'm short-tempered.
You are?
Yeah, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
I would have never have spotted you as someone who's short-tempered.
Yeah, I'm actually short-tempered, and I admit that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you're not when you're dancing?
I'm not. Certainly I'm not.
Has your temperament gotten better with dance, or has it been somewhat the same?
Yeah, it did actually.
Okay. That's very interesting. I would have never guessed that you'd be a short-tempered person.
Yeah, well, I am.
That's so fascinating. Huh. At this point of my time in Muscat, I can say that I met a decent number of people through various activities, but I don't necessarily have a social relationship with them outside of that activity. As a result, I have a very limited perception of who they are as people, which I think is a common case for most. So it was pretty fun for me to hear about the side of Ayman outside the dance group and how he changed over time. It gave me a more rounded perception of him. And guess what? The same limited perception I have of people probably applies to me too. Before this interview, it occurred to me that maybe a lot of people, including Ayman, might assume that I'm not familiar with the breakdancing scene in Oman. Remember what I said earlier about me having my own connection to this whole thing? Well, here it is. For me, it feels like it brought a very distant memories from the past, because I was telling you earlier.
Yeah.
My brother was a breakdancer. And
this was a complete shock for me. Imagine what your brother was doing, now you are doing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So he used to be a breakdancer, and whenever he was on babysitting duty, because we have a huge age gap between us.
And have little Fatema right there.
Yeah. And I just loved the atmosphere. I loved how everyone seemed to be so comfortable. Everyone seemed to be so happy.
Yeah.
And everyone seems to be so okay with crashing and falling, honestly. And no one really bats an eye. I think that's what I like about it so much. No one really bats an eye, and no one's there to judge you if you do crash and fall.
Yeah, because you're not in a competition. You're just practicing. Yeah, you can't fail. You can fail however you like.
The 2000s were quite a decadent time for hip-hop and rap. And at least from my memory of it, it seemed like everyone around me was interested in it one way or another. The memories and small moments I have from those experiences are things I still cherish till this day. In fact, even my interest in English as a language began with music and shows from that time. From Dr. Dre to That's So Raven, my obsession was laser focused on what those people were saying and the stories they shared. So, walking into the dance class by mistake momentarily transported me back into that part of my childhood. As for the dance group, one of the things that I appreciate about it is that it has people from various ages. Some are there to teach, others are there to learn, or do a bit of both. And for anyone who might be curious about my breakdancing abilities, I'm pretty awful at it, but it's fun to try anyways. Out of everything I do, it's one of the things that I'm worst at, and I didn't think being bad at something like this would bring so much fun into my days, especially since there are a fair number of beginners who I share my flops with. Plus, it's a good prescription for insomnia. On the Way Home is brought to you by Oman FM. This show is available for streaming on all podcast platforms. This episode was hosted and produced by me, Fatema Dinari, and you can follow me on Instagram at Fatema's Eyes, Fatemas Eyes, sound engineered and mixed by Adzam Al Raisi. Thank you for listening.